Good evening. And thank you for joining us on Monday, May 8th, 2023 for the Administration and Public Works Committee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:17 p.m. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Reed, Councilmember Kelly, Councilmember Harris,
Present.
Councilmember Newsma,
Here.
Councilmember Burns.
Here.
You have 3 present. You have a quorum now.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to call for a motion to approve minutes of our last meeting, April 24th, 2023.
So move. Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded to approve the minutes for April 24th. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, the minutes from April 24th pass. Public comments.
We have 2 signed up, and the first one is present, and that is Aaron Cohen.
Thank you very much. Aaron Cohen, 7th Ward. From their proposal, Johnson Consulting seems to be a thorough, intelligent, and very experienced firm, but it also seems that they view this engagement as though the city of Evanston itself were undertaking the Ryan Field redevelopment project rather than Northwestern. It would have been useful to us concerned citizens to see all the proposals and to have time to weigh in. So I really strongly encourage the committee to give us that time before voting on the Johnson proposal. And I want to reiterate that no matter who gets the contract for the economic impact study, money into city coffers is just one piece of the puzzle. The impact of the Ryan development potentially is enormous on the city's environment, quality of life, etc. If this were just about money, the city could consider bringing in large factories, a lakefront airport, or other developments that would make big bucks but be devastating in other ways. To thousands of Evanston residents, building a huge entertainment complex in an area that is totally ill-suited also could have irrevocable, devastating impacts. Without studying all the impacts, the city would wind up with additional revenue, but the cost to local businesses, to homeowners, to the environment, etc., might not be worth a dime of it. There's no rush here. The imperative, I think, is to get this right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next is David Cook.
Good evening, Dave Cook, 2683 Prairie, 7th Ward. I'm speaking tonight to request that item A7, the C.H. Johnson approval, be held or introduced for consideration and not voted on for action tonight. I know that that's typical with a RFP response, but this is more like a design and planning and development issue than a AMPW issue. There's a lot of planning going on, and so I think that it warrants a little bit more consideration. The item should be carefully considered, and all RFPs should be considered and reviewed, because from a brief review that I and some of my associates did, the response seems to be very similar, would give you the same report as the Trip Umbaugh report that we've already seen, and that report seems to be significantly flawed and significantly biased. If that doesn't happen, I think that you may ignore a lot of the issues that the neighborhood and the community has brought up, which is parking, transportation, and payments to the community, and those things don't seem to be outlined in their RFP response. And that's some things that I think you really need to make sure that you're going to get. So if just pushing this through in one evening, I think is probably inappropriate for something that's this important. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope that you can hold this. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more speakers present, so we go online, and it's Mike Vasilko.
Thank you. Following suit with the two prior speakers, item A7 should be held. To the best of my knowledge, there's been no community participation in the selection process. I have personally no idea whether this consulting firm that's being recommended is the right fit. We haven't seen the other proposals. We know nothing about who else was being considered or what their proposals would have been. So I think it's troubling that nobody from the community was involved, especially the group that is closest to the proposed Ryan Field. And I think until that information is provided, so the proposal is provided for the other companies being considered, and a meeting with the residents and city to go over those proposals so that the community can have participation in the selection. So it's not appropriate to award this tonight in such fast manner. I'd also like to digress to a previous council meeting, 4/24/2023. And I need a clarification from somebody on what was item 8.8, which had to do with giving or awarding an additional $65,000 to the Smith Group for the ADA ramp going to the dog beach. Now, blended into all of that language, there was a quote for estimated construction cost, $500,000. I just don't want it assumed that because the council voted for the $65,000 fee, that somehow this one line that proposes $500,000 for construction costs, that the council didn't approve that. This has happened before where there's some vague reference to a cost, and then the staff comes back later and says, oh, you guys approved that.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Vasilko. Thank you.
There are no other people signed up.
Ms. Conley, do you wish to say something?
Yes, thank you so much
Yes.
for recognizing me. Tricia Conley, Second Ward. I am also very concerned about Johnson Consulting getting awarded for the economic impact study contract. I think as a city, I've said this before, but I will keep saying it until it changes. We have to bring in the community on some of these very impactful decisions that take place in our town. You are going to affect the lives of many people in the immediate community surrounding the stadium, as well as potentially many people who live in other parts of Evanston by what you do on this project and who you hire and how that is determined what the impact is. That should be something that goes in line with the community being your partner, your co-conspirator, if you will, and they should have a bigger voice than anybody you hire or Northwestern. It is that simple. And I hope tonight you will really consider that and vote no on sending this forward until the community has greater input as far as what needs to be done here. Thank you for your time, and I'm hoping for the best tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last of our public comment. Is there anyone else? Okay. Thank you all so much for your input. At this time, we'll begin with the consent agenda. Are there any items we wish to have pulled off at this time?
A3, A3, A7, and A8.
Councilmember Nusma, anything? No? Okay. Yes. With that said, we will pull for discussion A3, A7, and A8. I'd like to call for a vote for all other,
We need a motion.
I need a motion
Madam
for,
Chair, I will move the consent agenda with the exceptions of items A3, A7, and A8.
we need a second.
Councilmember Kelly, throw in a second.
Second.
Okay. It has been moved and properly seconded that we approve the consent agenda minus items A3, A7, and A8. I'd like to do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns. With a 3-0 vote, ma'am.
All right, thank you. The consent agenda passes minus A3, A7, and A8. Is there a motion for A3?
Madam Chair, I'll move item A3, approval of a contract award with Boulder Contractors Incorporated for the 2023 water main improvements and street resurfacing project, which is bid number 23-26.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there a discussion?
Thank you. I asked that this be removed. I had a couple residents inquire about the waiving of the MWBE requirements or partial, and I wonder if someone could just speak to that. And I see here, I don't know, Ms. Biggs, would you be able to address that, the waiving of that, and why?
Hello, my name is Laura Biggs. I'm the city engineer. So I do not know specifically why they requested to have only a partial thing, except that they indicated that they just did not receive competitive quotes for the other items that are not currently, they have a number of subcontractors, but not all of them are MWEBEs. However, our existing ordinance is a goal, not a requirement, and so the actual memo about reviewing the compliance is written by our purchasing department, and they indicated their analysis.
Okay, so, just so I understand, so they were already, why wouldn't we hold out for, just because they were already contracted, and is that?
No, when they submit their bid, they indicate in their bid how much of the MWEBE that they will meet, and if they're requesting a waiver. However, our ordinance does not necessarily require them to meet it. So typically, staff recommends the lowest responsible bid, regardless of if MWEBE is met.
Okay, so in this case, that took priority over MWBE preference, just so I understand. I'm just trying to respond to residents wondering,
If I may, yes, the city code establishes the MWEBE, and actually it's MWDEBE now, only as a goal because it cannot be a requirement. So we cannot make it a requirement, it is only a goal. We do have a requirement for the local employment program for projects that are awarded over $250,000. And Boulder does intend to meet that requirement. But again, the MWDEBE is only a goal and is not a reason why we should not award a contract to someone. But if you look at the memo, the packet on page 65 of 326, APW, they are using 6 different firms that are either a minority women, Evanston, or disadvantaged business enterprise. So it's obvious that they did try to make some attempt to try to get that. And in fact, Flater Plumbing is an Evanston business and is doing some of the work as well.
great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Oh, yep, Councilmember Burns.
Tammy's probably not on the call, is she? Is she on the call? And I could be wrong, but I think typically we say why they were not able to meet the NWEB goals. So I don't know if we can at least describe why they couldn't meet it. Sometimes they say we're self-performing the work, and there's usually some justification for it. So if Tammy is on the line, I'd love for her to speak to that if possible.
Good evening, Councilmember Burns and council members. This is Tammy Nunez, City of Evanston Purchasing Manager. If you give me one quick second, I'm bringing up that additional information for you. And Boulder did attempt to make the 25% goal.
And Chair, we can revisit at council if we need to.
Yes, if I can supply the information via email, that'd be appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Are there other questions? If not, I'd like to do roll call.
Councilmember Reed? Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Passes with a 4-0 count, and we'll move on to City Council. Next, we will move to A7. I'm looking for motion on A7.
Madam Chair, I'll move item A7, approval of contract award to C.H. Johnson Consulting Incorporated for an independent Ryan Field rebuild economic impact study consulting services. This is bid number 23-19.
Second?
It has been moved and properly seconded. Are there questions? Yes. Would you-
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Paul Zalmazak. I serve as the Economic Development Manager for the City of Evanston. I wanted you to know that Charles Johnson, one of the founders of Johnson Consulting, is on the Zoom call. And if you had questions about his approach, he's willing to answer those. I did promise Councilmember Revelle that I would point out one of the questions that one of the community members had asked about the substitution effect. Generally speaking, meaning if somebody is going to be spending money at a concert in Evanston, what won't they be spending their money on instead, right? There's a fixed amount of income that you have or salary. If you choose to spend money at a concert, you might you won't have that money to spend elsewhere. And I wanted to make sure that Mr. Johnson explained how he approaches that, because that was something that one of our community members, who is a highly trained and accomplished economist, thought we overlooked. And Mr. Johnson, if you're available, if you could please explain your approach to that.
Yes, be pleased to. Good evening, council members. Charlie Johnson with Johnson Consulting. Yeah, our work will be aimed towards serving the city of Evanston. And so we're representing you in our work. And as we look at the stadium, we think about the fact that it's currently a stadium. So we're having to think about the incremental impacts over and what will happen. And so we have to think about the reduction of the amount of spend that will happen because of what Paul just indicated. They have a choice, and if they choose to do X, then they can't do Y necessarily. But the fact of the matter is, we have to measure what percent is coming from the local Evanston area to the games. And that will be kind of an investigation that we will do and measuring that. And then we will be having the spending factors for the people that come outside of Evanston, which bring new dollars to the market. So we'll be taking consideration the substitution effect for sure. And I'd be pleased to answer any more questions you all may have.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilmember Kelly.
Sure. I just, a couple of the residents mentioned areas that weren't covered in here, such as parking, and what were, could I just ask the residents who spoke to this what the areas were of concern so that those can be addressed? Would that be all right?
It was parking and transportation.
Crowding effects, inflation multiplier that's used in larger communities, but maybe not appropriate for something that's used in a smaller community like Evanston. Multiplier where a lot of people come in and then they spin up and do other things, but it might not be so appropriate here. Potential negative effects of property values, parking, noise pollution, crime, strain on the city services, cost for all those things that I didn't see that those things were included in this proposal.
Thank you. So, I don't know, were you able to hear any of that, or Paul, can you?
No, ma'am, I was not. Sorry.
It's okay. So that's why we use the podium. So parking, I'll give you a list and give you a second to process. Parking,
Okay,
transportation,
okay.
inflation,
Inflation, okay.
multiplier, yep, I couldn't read my own writing. Property value,
Okay,
crime, and I'm
Okay.
missing one more thing.
I remember environment being one.
And environment, yep, that was the big one, yep. All right, so there are a few more, but we're not going to entertain all of those this evening. But they'd like to know, what I heard our constituents say is that they didn't see that listed in the proposal. So I'm wondering if you can talk to whether you're going to deal with those, how you're going to deal with those. You don't have to have answers for all of those at the moment, but are they issues that you're going to deal with?
Yeah, thank you, and I will answer that question. We will be addressing, we have a sub-consultant, Desmond, for our parking, and they will be addressing parking on a macro level, but they will not be doing a technical study for parking. Transportation, that's a vertical, that's a technical vertical. Ours is an economic vertical that we'll be looking at. And oftentimes we interface with the technical verticals, and we're not aware of the the level of work that's been completed either by Northwestern or by the city, but we'll be pleased to work with Paula and team to inventory what has been done. And I think it would be fair for us to put together a plan of attack from the city's perspective if there are holes in that information. As it relates to inflation, we will definitely be taking that into consideration on both the construction costs, development costs, as well as the spending factors, as well as the cost of city services. There will be perhaps an increment of increase in city services, and we'll help calculate that as well with inflation. Multiplier, we use a very well thought through tool called Implan. We also use RIMS, but we prefer Implan. And then we do quite a bit of checking. You know, our multipliers, oftentimes we have the original spending, and then we'll have layers of induced and indirect spending. And that will be, you know, anywhere between a 50% increase to 100% increase on the number that we look at. That's the direct spend. So yes, we are very thoughtful on the impact and the multipliers that we use, and we will work with the city so they understand those and will be conversant in them once we leave the scene. As it relates to property, we will calculate property tax, and that's a function of values. So we'll make an anecdotal assessment of what happens in neighborhoods when there are stadiums that have concerts in them. And we'll be doing that anecdotally. We'll do the same thing with crime. Environment is another skill set that's really not our category, but we will be pleased to put together a work plan as it relates to the environmental aspects of that. And oftentimes, parking, transportation, and environment are done by one or two firms. They have that all under their auspices. They can do multiple aspects of engineering and assessments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Zalmazak, do you have any additional information?
The only thing I would add, Committee Chair, is both at Economic Development Committee and before the council, I stressed that we were not going to be able to study every impact, that we would do our best to study as many of the impacts as we could. We have budget limitations, we have time limitations. So we think that this proposal is highly responsive to the RFP that the City Council approved and posted and distributed.
All right, thank you. Are there other? Councilmember Newsome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How soon can we expect a report? Because I would like to move this conversation forward and not let it drag on indefinitely.
Thank you. I believe the Johnson firm confirmed that they could deliver this within 90 days. I don't think they went to 120. We did have a couple of respondents that did that. Mr. Johnson, can you confirm you can deliver this in 90 days?
90 days, and we'll have a draft before that, a working draft before that.
With a presentation before it's finalized.
Workshops and presentations, correct.
Thank you. Sooner is always better than later. Thank you.
Councilmember Kelly.
And I believe there was a community outreach component also. So that'll be brought forward separately? Or?
Thank you for bringing that up. So there is community outreach as part of this project, but the actual community engagement consultant, we will bring that to the May 22nd meeting. There's a separate engagement for that. That's a deeper dive with multiple meetings, and meaning that the engagement firm will host a number of meetings. We didn't have the ability to bring it tonight just because of the council agenda.
Okay, so you've already selected, though, through the RFP process, a separate firm?
We have not. We are going to, there were several responses that we will internally review and then bring for recommendation.
Okay, great. I guess I just sort of dovetailing off some of the comments, because this is such a charged, loaded proposal, and I know, we'll never get everybody's buy-in, obviously, but I do feel like it would be helpful to hold some community meetings with the proposed the proposed firm to do the economic development. I just feel like I think it would be helpful. And I don't know if the process allows for residents to see the other proposals. I just think if there's a more open process, it'll be embraced in a better way than if not. So I don't know if there's room for that.
I honestly, I don't know what our procurement rules allow in terms of releasing other proposals, but yeah, we would have to ask.
Okay. I think it would be helpful before sealing the deal on this to meet with the community on this that's so interested to at least meet Mr. Johnson, and just hear about it, I think, directly, and ask the questions, pertinent questions that are of concern to the residents. I think it'll move forward in a smoother fashion if the community is involved.
So let me see if I can understand. What I thought I heard Director Zalmazak say is that once this is done, we would do a deeper dive with the information that we receive with the community meeting.
No,
Correct?
so there's a nuance there. So there is a community engagement component of the economic impact study, and I'll let Mr. Johnson explain in more detail if necessary. But then there's a separate engagement with a community engagement specialist. There are multiple firms that reply to it, but their process would be hosting community meetings to review the results of this particular study and bring it all together. What I think Councilmember Kelly is asking is if the community can have an opportunity to meet with Mr. Johnson before we agree to engage in a contract. That would be highly unusual and not part of our normal practice. The representatives of the community would agree to go along with staff's recommendation, and then what I was responding to was afterwards, do we release the proposals for others to read, which is less effective. I understand what Councilmember Kelly is trying to accomplish.
All right, thank you. Are you done? Or
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the community to be more engaged, and even in this selection process, just to get some feedback. I'm concerned that, I don't know, I mean, I think there are missing components, and it would be nice to have one firm with a more comprehensive approach, including environment and parking and traffic. So I just think the more the community is involved, even though there will always be some, we'll never have 100%, I think we'll move forward in a more seamless fashion. So.
Thank you. Deputy Director Stonebeck.
I just want to clarify that the scope of work that's included in the proposal, included in the response, is what was asked for in the proposal. So to add new items to the proposal now would not be appropriate, in that this was discussed at economic development, and at economic development they came out with a general consensus that they wanted to have this study, they want to include transportation, they want to include parking, which is all included in the proposal that we received from CJ Johnson. So to have a community meeting about what should be what work should be performed is already decided.
Right. It's not necessarily about what should be, although there is a subcontractor involved in this. I think it's more just like the last round, the community had some concern about the background of the firm and the objectivity. I think all of that is just, you want community buy-in, I think, with regard to a study. So that's all.
Okay. I'm unaware of any other project in which that was done, in which we had community input after proposals have already been received and reviewed by staff, to go out and then get community input on that. They do have a community engagement as part of their work, so
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. Last call for questions. All right, then I call for a vote, please. Roll call.
Councilmember Reed? Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Thank you. A7 passes 4-0. And we'll move to A8. I look for motion on this.
Madam Chair, I'll move item A8, approval of change order number 1 to the agreement with GovHR USA for services related to investigating and implementing recommendations based on concerns raised by the Black Employee Action Group.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. Are there questions? Councilmember Kelly.
So I just, I've had, again, residents inquire, and I just wonder if someone could clarify for me. So we subscribe to GARE, the difference, like, when would we go to GARE to consult with something like this versus HR Gov, since that is their specialty? I don't know if, City Manager Stowe, you can address that.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. Luke Stowe, City Manager. This is not, we view this as not an either-or situation. GovHR is performing an important function, but we also will be leveraging some of the resources from GARE as well. They have equity toolkits and other resources. But for this particular work that GovHR is doing, we feel that it's most appropriate to work with them and their consultant.
Okay, thank you. Does Government Alliance on Race and Equity, would they provide these services? Is this something that,
So when I've reached out to them in the past, they do not provide these types of exact services that GovHR is offering. So that was one of the reasons we decided to work with GovHR.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I'd add, City Manager Stowe, that we worked with the group, and they were very pleased with our decisions at this time. Are there any other questions at this time? Seeing none, I call for a vote.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
All right. That looks like that is the end of our agenda for today. Seeing no other business before us, I call this meeting adjourned at 5:54 p.m. Planning and Development begins in 6 minutes.